August 12, 2022. A quiet night in a suburban Atlanta neighborhood. A home that once held the echoes of laughter now sits under the weight of something irreversible. The air is thick with an uneasy stillness, until it's shattered by the sound of a woman's voice. Cold. Certain. Final. A 911 operator picks up. The voice on the other end is calm, too calm. 911, what's your emergency? There's a brief pause. Then, the words that change everything. I just woke up, and I know exactly what I have to do. Denise Holloway has been gone for 8 months. Not dead. Not alive. Suspended somewhere in between. But now, she's awake. And nothing will ever be the same again. Denise Holloway loved her husband. Trusted him. Built a life beside him. But trust is a fragile thing. And when it breaks, someone always pays the price. She didn't wake up seeking justice. She woke up knowing exactly what had to be done. Was it a mother protecting her child? Or was it something else entirely? You decide. Atlanta, Georgia. March 2022. Life was steady for the Holloway family. From the outside looking in, they had everything a family could hope for. A beautiful home in a quiet neighborhood. Stability. Success. Love. Denise Holloway was the kind of woman people gravitated toward. At 42, she had built a name for herself as a talented hairstylist and salon owner. Her shop, Dee's Touch, was more than a business, it was a sanctuary. A place where women came to laugh, vent, and walk out feeling renewed. She was a wife. A mother. A woman who took care of everyone around her. And at the center of her world was her daughter, Aaliyah. Aaliyah Holloway, just 17 years old, was the kind of girl people expected to go far. A top student, a rising track star, a young woman on the verge of stepping into her future. She was bright, driven, and carried herself with the quiet confidence of someone who knew she had potential. And then, there was Eric Holloway. A husband. A father. A hero in the eyes of his community. A firefighter with nearly 2 decades of service, Eric was the kind of man people called dependable. Strong. Reliable. A devoted family man, always seen with a warm smile and a firm handshake. The kind of husband who showed up with flowers. The kind of father who cheered the loudest at track meets. But life has a way of changing in an instant. March 2022. A rainy evening. A slick highway. A moment of impact that sent metal twisting, glass shattering, tires skidding into the darkness. When the paramedics arrived, Denise Holloway was barely breathing. Broken ribs. A fractured skull. Brain trauma. She was rushed to the hospital, placed in intensive care, and then, nothing. Silence. Machines beeping steadily, counting the days, the weeks, the months. Eric never left her side. Or at least, that's what everyone thought. They saw the devoted husband, holding her hand, whispering words of love, brushing the hair from her face. They saw a man grieving, trying to hold his family together. What they didn't see, was what was happening behind closed doors. Because while Denise lay motionless in that hospital bed, something was happening inside the Holloway home. Something that would shatter everything Denise believed in. Something that would turn her from a loving wife, into a woman with only one thing left to do. And when she finally opened her eyes, she didn't just wake up. She remembered. And she was ready to act. For months, the Holloway home carried an emptiness that could be felt in the air. Denise was gone but not gone. Her presence lingered in every corner, her absence a wound that never quite healed. But while the world saw a grieving family holding on, something was unraveling behind closed doors. Aaliyah Holloway was changing. She had always been full of life, smiling at track meets, laughing with friends, carrying herself with the kind of confidence that made people believe she was destined for great things. But as the weeks passed, that Aaliyah faded. Her teachers noticed it first. A girl who once turned in flawless assignments began missing deadlines. Her test scores dropped. The light in her eyes dimmed. At home, she was a ghost. Meals left untouched. Conversations met with silence. A once affectionate daughter now flinched at the slightest touch from her father. Lisa Holloway, Eric's younger sister, was the only one who seemed to see the change for what it was. Aaliyah was withdrawing, disappearing into herself. Lisa had always been close to her niece. When Denise was too busy at the salon, Lisa was the one who took Aaliyah shopping, showed up for school plays, whispered advice about boys and life. So when she noticed the weight gain, the baggy sweatshirts, the way Aaliyah carried herself, arms crossed, avoiding eye contact, Lisa knew something was wrong. One evening, she asked the question that changed everything. "Aaliyah, are you pregnant?" Aaliyah froze. Tears welled in her eyes. She shook her head at first, but when Lisa pressed, the dam broke. The words came out in a whisper. A confession wrapped in horror. "It's Dad's baby." The world seemed to stop. Lisa couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. She had prepared herself for a secret. A mistake. A teenage girl scared of disappointing her mother. But this? This was something else entirely. Lisa wanted to believe there was a mistake. That Aaliyah was confused. That there was some explanation that didn't lead to the unthinkable. But Aaliyah wasn't lying. She couldn't have been. Lisa took her to the doctor the next morning. The pregnancy was confirmed. And then came the test that left no room for denial. DNA doesn't lie. Eric Holloway was the father. Lisa confronted him that night. She didn't ease into it. Didn't give him the chance to lie. "Aaliyah's pregnant. The test says it's yours." Eric's face twisted into something unrecognizable. "She's lying." His voice was sharp. Quick. Too quick. Lisa stepped closer, her hands shaking. "The DNA test doesn't lie, Eric." "She's lying." He shouted this time, his voice cracking. "It's her boyfriend's. She's covering for him." But there was no boyfriend. No secret relationship. No other explanation. Eric Holloway, the devoted husband, the loving father, the hero firefighter, was a predator. Lisa wanted to go to the police. She wanted to tell the world. August 3, 2022, Denise opens her eyes. Her first words, "Where's Aaliyah?" Slowly, she pieces things together. Aaliyah visits her, visibly pregnant. The family hesitates to tell her who the father is. Denise overhears a nurse whispering about it. Denise confronts Aaliyah. Aaliyah breaks down. "Mom, I didn't have a choice." Denise's entire demeanor changes. She stops crying. She stares blankly, processing. Then, in a cold, eerie tone, she says, "He's going to pay." August 12, 2022. The day Denise Holloway left the hospital was the day she reclaimed her life. For 8 months, she had been trapped, first inside her own body, then inside the horror of what she had woken up to. She had lost time, but she had gained something else. Clarity. She knew the truth now. Lisa had told her everything. The pregnancy. The DNA test. The way Eric had denied it. Laughed it off. Called their daughter a liar. Denise had spent years believing in the man she married, the father of her child, the man who had stood by her hospital bed and pretended to grieve. That belief was gone. All that remained was a decision. That night, the Holloway home was quiet. Aaliyah was staying with Lisa. The house belonged to just 2 people now. Eric arrived late, unaware that the woman waiting for him was no longer the wife he had once controlled. She was something else now. Denise invited him in. Her voice was calm. Steady. The way a woman sounds when she already knows how the night will end. She poured him a drink. Told him they needed to talk. And she pressed record on her phone. Aaliyah told me everything, she said, watching his reaction. Eric scoffed. Took a slow sip of whiskey. She's a liar. Denise didn't blink. The DNA test says otherwise. He set his glass down. Leaned back in his chair. The arrogance dripping from every movement. You really believe that? You really think your little girl is innocent? Silence stretched between them. Then Denise asked the question. The last question he would ever answer. Do you regret it? And Eric Holloway, firefighter, husband, father, smirked. She wanted it. Denise moved without thinking. The knife was already in her hand, her fingers gripping the handle with the kind of certainty that comes when a person has already made peace with what must be done. The first stab was deep, straight to the chest, puncturing muscle, piercing through the skin that had once pressed against hers in love. Eric gasped. A sound of shock. Of pain. Of realization. The second stab was deeper. His body collapsed to the floor, blood spreading across the hardwood. His breath came in short, shallow gasps. His eyes, wide with fear, locked onto the woman he had underestimated. Denise stood over him, her chest rising and falling, the knife still clutched in her hands. There was no fear in her eyes. No hesitation. She had spent 8 months asleep. But now she was wide awake. She walked to the phone. Pressed 3 numbers. 911, what's your emergency? Her voice was steady. Unshaken. I killed my husband. Minutes later, flashing red and blue lights painted the walls of the Holloway home. Officers entered, weapons drawn, only to find Denise standing in the kitchen, her hands coated in blood, the murder weapon on the counter. She didn't resist. She didn't run. She had done what needed to be done. And when investigators played the recording, when they heard Eric's final words, when they listened to the proof of what he had done to Aaliyah, there wasn't a single person in that courtroom who could say they wouldn't have done the same. Denise Holloway was still in the same blood-stained clothes when they placed the handcuffs around her wrists. The ride to the police station was silent. No questions. No resistance. She had already made peace with the cost of her decision. But peace wouldn't come easily. She was charged with first-degree murder. A crime that, in the eyes of the law, had no justification. Denise's defense was simple. A mother's instinct. A woman protecting the only thing that mattered. I was protecting my daughter. But the prosecution saw something else. She took the law into her own hands. And that was the argument that would decide her fate. The trial, January 2024 to March 2024. The courtroom was packed. News cameras lined the streets outside the courthouse. The world was watching. The case wasn't just about Denise anymore, it was about justice, morality, and the fine line between vengeance and self-defense. The prosecution painted Eric Holloway as a victim. No matter what he did not deserve to die this way. But then, the recording was played. The courtroom fell silent. Eric's voice filled the room. She wanted it. A juror covered her mouth. Someone in the audience whispered, "Oh my God." Denise never looked away. She stared straight ahead, letting the world hear the truth. Then came the moment that changed everything. Aaliyah took the stand. Her voice trembled. Her hands gripped the edge of the witness stand so tightly her knuckles turned white. She looked at the jury. At the judge. At the people who had the power to decide her mother's future. And she spoke. My mom did what the law wouldn't. Tears streamed down her face. The weight of everything she had endured, everything she had survived, pressed into those words. I told the truth. And nobody protected me. Nobody stopped him. My mom was the only one who cared enough to stop him. Some jurors looked away, eyes red, jaws clenched. Because how do you convict a mother for saving her child? After 6 hours of deliberation, the jury returned. The judge read the decision aloud. Guilty. But not of murder. Manslaughter. A crime of passion. A moment of uncontrollable rage. The sentence, 10 years in prison. Eligible for parole in 5. Gasps echoed through the courtroom. Denise exhaled. A slow, controlled breath. She would lose years. She would miss moments. But she would see freedom again. The internet erupted. Hashtag Justice for Denise trended worldwide. Some called her a hero. Others argued justice should have been served legally. The debates raged on. News panels dissected the case. Talk shows analyzed the morality of her actions. But through it all, Aaliyah never wavered. She vowed to fight for her mother's freedom. To tell the world who Eric Holloway really was. To make sure no one ever forgot the truth. And as Denise sat behind bars, waiting for the day she would hold her daughter again, she knew one thing for certain. She had done what needed to be done. This case leaves us with one of the most difficult questions in true crime: was this justice, or did Denise Holloway go too far? On one hand, the law says no one has the right to take another person's life, no matter how horrific their actions may be. But on the other, how many people in her position would have done the same? If you were on the jury, what would your verdict have been? Would you have convicted her? Or would you have set her free? Let's talk about it in the comments below. And if you believe Denise was protecting her daughter, hit the like button so we can see how many of you stand by her decision. If you want more shocking true crime cases just like this one, subscribe to the channel and turn on notifications, because every case has a story, and every story deserves to be told. Thanks for watching. Stay safe, and I'll see you in the next one.